On this episode of the show, I have with me Chinmay Barve. He is the VP of Engineering at Nooks AI, and we're going to be talking about what you do those first 60 to 90 days when you take a new role, especially in a leadership position, what you should be doing, how quickly should you be acting, and how do you know if you're making an impact? Because obviously you're brought in to make some impact and changes and improvements, and we're going to talk to him about some of those things, and we're going to talk to him about some of the learning lessons as well. And Chinmay, I appreciate the time.
Yep, glad to be here.
Absolutely. If you could tell us what Nooks does.
Yeah, for sure. So at Nooks, we believe that with the right tools, the sales rep of tomorrow is going to be 100x more productive. Um, and we also think that in the foreseeable future, that will be enabled by thoughtful human in the loop AI workflows. So we have been basically building towards that objective with those assumptions, and of course, sales is a very big space. There are lots of different teams within sales, different workflows. The place where we started and have found a lot of traction and commercial success is in the outbounding space and outbounding workflows. So SDRs, BDRs, those teams love Nooks. And in terms of what the platform has today, the actual products on the platform are we have a virtual sales floor, we have AI coaching, we have an AI powered phone dialer, and we have AI prospecting. So all of those, combined, make your outbounding teams much more productive, collaborative, more efficient. And we are just building towards, more trying to make more and more workflows more efficient for these teams.
Very cool. That's a whole podcast on its own. But this episode we're going to be talking a little bit about the transition and how when you are a new leader, and obviously for frame of reference, you joined Nix pretty recently, so this is a good conversation because it's fresh of mind. I guess when you're first joining a company, I mean the first 60, 90 days, in a startup, fast moving within the AI space. I mean, it's I guess some new factors to deal with, but it is a fast moving time to be in AI. When you are jumping on board in a leadership role on a fast moving AI startup, is that like any other leadership role you're taking? Is it a little bit different? Is there something particular that stands out, or just share your thoughts if you could?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think similar in some ways, different in some. I think in engineering, there's this phrase, this saying, which people have been using for a long time, which is, hey, you gotta be able to change the engines of the plane while the plane is flying. And with high growth AI companies, I've changed that to you need to be able to change the engines while the plane is taking off. So it's not like it's not cruising, with constant, speed. It's literally accelerating and taking off, and that's when you got to be able to change the engine. So yes, I think the rate at which AI companies are growing is more than anything we have seen from previous generation companies. That's a big difference, I would say. But of course, a lot of the core principles remain the same.
Absolutely. I guess let's maybe talk about some of those. So a lot of leaders are when they find themselves in those new roles, typically we hear they are spending their time listening, and I get that. What they're listening for, I think, is always personal to each person. When you're starting out and you're in your first 60, 90 days, you're obviously listening. You're trying to do your fact finding. What are you listening for? What are you trying to pick up? What are you observing for your own benefit?
Yeah, I think for exec roles, to some extent, I would say the listening and even the problem solving to some part starts even before you join, right? And it should. I think it's a very important part of before you start or even before you sign the any type of full time employment contract. And I think that's because you are going to have the founders of the company or the existing leadership of the company. There'll be things that they deeply believe in, and There'll be factors that have been some of the core reasons why they have been successful so far, why the company is growing. And there'll be things that they would want to figure out, the problems, that they want to solve going forward, because of which they are, trying to hire whatever exec, maybe engineering or even others. And I think being able to understand that goes a long way in both having high impact for the company, and just for yourself as well, to setting yourself up for success when you join. So I think the listening, coming back to your question, starts from before you even join. And I'm looking for some of these core, what has worked, what are some of these core values that people have, especially the founders and the existing leadership team, but also the sort of the people at the company, the engineers and others. And I'm listening for what are the problems that these folks have and how they have tried to solve it. And that's, I think it's a tricky uh, part there, in the sense that you're right, you don't want to spend, like, too much time just listening. That is also a anti pattern. So I think, like, trying to get into some of the problem solving while listening is a good pattern that I've seen it work.
I love that. I love that you actually took us back to before you joined, because I fundamentally align with you. I feel like we hear a lot about people say, "Oh, well, you're not only interviewing with the company, you're also interviewing them." And I think we hear that a lot, but then I don't know if all the time people are asking the things they should before they join to understand whether or not that job is necessarily a fit for you to be a platform. And I guess if you could, take us back, since we kind of started that path, when you're looking at joining Nooks, it's an AI company. I'm sure there's a lot of AI opportunities right now for you. What were you hoping to hear? Was there something? Were you looking for a particular fit as you were going through and interviewing them in the process? Talk to us a little bit about that mindset, because I think a lot of people sometimes miss that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I was at my previous company for 9.5 years at Mixed Panel, right? So I was very, and before that, I was at Twitter for several years, and before that, Yahoo Search. I So I wasn't. I would say, I wasn't like a. I haven't done this too many times, to be honest. Where I've looked for jobs, interviewed at different companies. So I was doing it very passively. I was just, was talking to different founders in this space, and trying to understand, what they've been up to, and then see what resonates with me, what doesn't. So I didn't have like a clear cut criteria while I was just, like, starting my initial conversations. Looking back, I can articulate some of that, but I think I would be lying if I say, oh yeah, I knew exactly what I wanted. One thing that helped me was just, like, taking this approach of um, having the first conversation. If something seems, interesting, have that first conversation, see where that goes. If you're leaning in, lean in more. If you're, if you find yourself, like, leaning away, you look at something else. And it's all based on, a lot of our instincts and things that we have learned from the past, right? Like, so having been through different companies, different phases of those companies, and seen both successes and failures, you have a certain mental model of what correlates with success and what correlates with failure, right? And so you're trying to pattern match, and every person is going to have their own pattern matching going when it comes to that. So I was trying to pattern match on that. I think some companies obviously are much more transparent about things. I have been fortunate to, talk to people who I, had easy conversations with, and most of the folks in Silicon Valley have been pretty. Yeah, I mean, I've been in Silicon Valley basically throughout my career, so I mean, here I would say it's a very open culture. People talk about, their business, their problems, what has worked, what hasn't, even the numbers. People are very open to sharing what types of initiatives are generating what results, and so how much, because with AI there's like so much fluff as well, right? You want to know what's actually concrete. So I think those types of I think that sort of seeing how some of these factors fit into your mental model. But then again, looking back, I would say the criteria for me ended up being like, I would say people at the end of the day is one of the most important factors for me and has always been. You want to work with I want to work with really smart folks who are ambitious and are good problem solvers, low ego problem solvers, where you can focus on solving problems and building something awesome that we're all proud of, that also becomes commercially successful. So that's what I look for. Now, of course, uh, it's hard to see that from the outside, right? Like if you don't know much about those people, you can't make random assumptions based on someone's uh, LinkedIn photo or something, right? So you gotta. So the factors from outside that are visible are the what does the company do, the space in which the company works, and you want something that resonates there. Looking at But some of these factors, I think you can see how people, like from the outside, you can sort of see how these founders have made the decisions they have made so far, how the company has sort of evolved over time, and you can sort of join the dots there. So that's what I was doing. um, yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I,
I'll
I
take
like
a
that. I
pause.
think that's almost you need to slow down and make sure you're going through that process, because mentally we all get excited during that interview process. And obviously jumping back to you're starting, you've looked into, you've made the right decisions. You obviously are at a company, and you're brought in a lot of times to make an impact. I mean, that's what leadership's supposed to do. When you do start and you're starting at Nooks, before you start, do you come in with any things already in your mind as objectives for yourself personally? Because obviously you don't know the company yet, but is there anything you're hoping to achieve, or is it a case that you really need to get in before you set any personal objectives? Because I mean, that's tricky as well.
Yeah, no, I do. I think coming in with those objectives is important. As an engineering exec at a tech company that was founded by engineers, like you are almost coming in as a late stage co-founder, So you got to come in with a point of view, and you have to be very aligned with the co-founders and the existing leaders. So when I joined Nooks, for example, I was coming in with a very, I mean, still now, I mean, I'm less than 60 days in. I came in with very much like this ambition and an objective of just building the best team in Silicon Valley. And that's the ambition that the co-founders share, and they've had a really talented team, but small team, right? I want to scale that, and really like, take it a notch above. So yeah, coming in with very clear sort of ambition and objectives that align with what the founders are trying to do.
Absolutely. So you start. You have your own objective. Obviously, you're there. You're there to listen and take your notes. And at what point do you go, you know what? I have listened. I have confirmed things. Because obviously, you don't want to jump the gun and go, there's things I have that I'd like to see happen. There's advice. There's teams already existing. But there's this delicate balancing act of I do need to do something, but I don't want to upset the ship. How do you balance that? How do you straddle that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you do want to have quick impact without just waiting and listening for forever. At the same time, you don't want to be the bull in the china shop, especially if you've joined a high growth startup that has done things that are right. Something is working for the company. If you're joining a different type of company, which is more like needs transformation or something, you might want to take more bolder, decisions right off the bat, and might just want to go with your gut rather than what has worked for the company. But when you are joining a company that has been successful and is growing fast, you need that balance of, well, of course, don't want to like break the things that are working. But at the same time, of course, they hired me because they want to solve certain problems that they haven't been able to solve. So how do I start making fast impact there? And I would say one thing there is, if you have sort of aligned on a lot of those more fundamental things like just culture and some of the problem solving and how you go about solving problems, I think you will see patterns where um, uh, some of the solutions are pretty obvious, or the founders have the right instincts. They have been wanting to do something. The rest of the team has been feeling the problem. The problem is very obvious to everybody. Even some of the solutions are kind of obvious, but for some reason, the execution on the solution hasn't gone the way it should have, or it hasn't been fast enough. Those are probably some of the low hanging fruits, that you can go quickly, hammer out, so that even you feel, sort of good. You get the joy of like, oh, I solved a problem, and that keeps you motivated. Other people, also like, oh, okay, great, progress is happening. They're excited. They start respecting you, and all of that. So I think those type of low hanging fruits, where it seems like, it is similar to like engineering, codes. Like everybody knows that there's this problem, there's a bug there. Just go fix the bug, and it's like it's a nice quick win. So I think that's a good starting point. But at the same time, I would say it should be in service of the real, harder problems. If you just stay in that quick wins basket, then it's not going to add up to much at the end of the day for the level that they're bringing you in at.
Absolutely. How do you measure your own, I guess, traction progress in these early days, right? Because you don't have a ton of data points, and you're trying to, not only is the team new to you, you're new to the team, but also you ideally want to make a very good first impression. Because I think as a leader, that's a big pressure. Like if you don't leave that good impression, that's hard to recover from, right? People are going to have a particular, oh, this is this type of manager, and but when you kind of want to monitor and judge your own progress, what are some things you've done that works for you?
Yeah, I think one was actually writing down a 30, 60, 90-day type of a plan. And this was also, again, before I joined. It was a part of the interview process, which was cool. I think the founders thought a lot about this. Again, at Nooks, one thing, they've been super transparent throughout the process, which I really loved. And I find that, common thing. That's why, even candidates love Nooks. But they're also very thoughtful about who they bring in and how they run their interviews and so on. Given that all three founders are engineers, very technical, engineering was very, dear to them. It was like, as our co-founder CEO says, like, I'm giving up my Legos, and to the new VP of engineering. So I think they were very thoughtful about this process. So the 30, 60, 90-day sort of planning, even though super rough, I mean, before you join, you don't have the exact details, but even just having that conversation beforehand went a long way. And then when I joined, we again, like, took a stab at that. We also set up daily syncs, which is, I'm a little over a month in, so that frequency is reduced. But especially the first month, we were just thinking of daily in the evening, at the end of the day. It was so important to align. I was also just thinking out loud my decisions and what I have observed and so on. Oversharing initially, I think that goes a long way to just like form the just to like validate, first of all, like, hey, do you think the same way as I think, and am I thinking the same way as you would think? And building that trust, because you can see a lot of time leadership decisions, like it's hard to tell, like, what went behind the scenes when a decision was made. And those decisions can have massive impact, right? Both positive and negative. So thinking out loud your reasoning process and the why behind everything and what observations went into making this decision, I think those were some of the things I would say, worked well.
Fantastic. I guess the other question that kind of fits maybe within that theme is, what did you do to foster that? I mean, it sounds like you were very transparent, and you're trying to foster that transparency, that openness, so obviously they would reciprocate with you. What do you have to do as a leader to foster that environment, to make sure people see your vulnerable side so that they can also feel vulnerable? Because I think that is a big component for me of leadership.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I would say some of it is just I think the low ego problem solvers, like assembling a team of low ego problem solvers and setting up your culture that way is very important for that, I would say. So some of it is just like who do you hire, even, sometimes it's hard to change some of this basic nature. If someone is very high ego, I don't know if, like, a company, where they work for 4 years is going to change their personality completely, right? So I think some of the things you might want to just screen on and align on early. But then, yes, there are a lot of things that, culturally you can do. One is, yes, being vulnerable yourself, right? Like, I personally am always, talking about my problems very, like with everybody. It's like, hey, here's what I'm thinking of. It's like, oh, maybe I should have, or even mistakes. Right? It's, maybe I should have done it this way. So I talk about that with everybody. The other leaders, CEOs, co-founders, the engineering team, all the engineers on the team, whether it's with and also the decision making process for everything, whether it's interview panels, when you're having a debrief, or whether it's a incident postmortem and you're figuring out what went wrong and what could we do better. If it's a planning meeting, whatever type of forum where you are, coming together and making decisions, setting that tone of, like, hey, we're just going to be super objective about what we want to do here, and be very open about how, what we can do there and what mistakes we made and what we should be doing better. So I think that goes a long way in developing that environment of trust where, the focus can be on the problem itself.
I love that. I guess, you've provided some great insights and advice in your first 60 days you've been at Nooks. If you have some advice for others who potentially are walking into a similar fast moving, fast paced environment, is there anything that any advice you have for that?
I think the main takeaway would be, like, just that high degree of alignment. I think you go with, especially at these, if you're in like a senior leadership role, you already have a certain culture. Of course, you ideally you want to be more adaptable and agile, and, like, you obviously you are learning and you want to grow. There's also a ton of things that you have already learned and that's baked into your mental model and your culture, and certain things you like, certain things you don't like. I think, like, aligning on what are those fundamental things that are core to you, and what are the things that are open-ended and you want to sort of learn and grow into. I think having a certain compass for that, and then just going, and once you're aligned, just go all in. I think maybe that would be the advice. I think go all in. Once you're committed, don't like have that doubt on day one. Make all of make all of those decisions before you join, and join with high conviction, and go all in like a founder.
I love it. That is actually fantastic advice. Chinmay, I appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing with us. If somebody does have a follow-up question that they'd like to get in touch with you to ask, obviously I haven't asked every question I could here. What's a good way of doing that?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. I am very active on LinkedIn, as you might imagine. I'm very focused on hiring. So yeah, always you can reach out, send me a message, and happy to chat more.
Absolutely. Love it. Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on again.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great chatting. Thanks for
Absolutely.
having me.
Sure thing. All right, that's it for the episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, Chinmay walked us through. Obviously, he just started at a very fast-moving AI startup, and he talked to us and walked us through how he decided to join, and it started at the interview process. He gave us some tips and how he went through that interview process, what he was looking for, how he's looking to make an impact the first 30, 60, 90 days, how he actually manages his own expectations, tries to create a really working relationship, fostering that vulnerability to kind of bring the team together and make the impact that he was hired to do. And I think it's a great episode. So please share this episode with somebody else who could benefit from it as well. Also, like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.